Czechoslovak shunting diesel locomotive with electric transmission with axial Formula 30-30. On its base was created the European gauge locomotive CKDT 669, differing only in the gauge. Insufficient capacity hitch weight CHME2 for shunting work of freight trains has led to the need for design and construction of factory CKD Praia more powerful locomotives. Decided on the construction to railways of the Soviet Union 6 shunting locomotives with electric transmission. In late 1963, it was built 3 experimental locomotive, the designation of CME3. Was modified diesel, capacity increased from 750 horsepower on CHME2 Model 6S 310 drive to 1,350 horsepower Model K6. In the Soviet Union experienced locomotive CME3 were aimed at shunting work in the station Lublino in Moscow Road. Since 1965, the factory CKD Praia started serial production CME3 for delivery to the USSR. Locomotive CME3 were produced in 1987 inclusive. Then began production of their modific. It was built for the USSR 7454 locomotive CHME3 with regard to their modifications. CHME3E with the electronic components and control circuits, built from 1987 to 1989, and CHME3T with an electrodynamic brake, built from 1984 to 1991. As of 2017, the majority of CHME3 diesel locomotives and modifications continues to be used, working on handling and export work. Besides the basic functions, in a number of countries, especially in countries such as Russia and Ukraine, CHME3 diesel locomotives are often used as locomotives for commuter trains on short mobility areas. TEP-70 diesel locomotive with electric transmission, passenger, the 7th development of the Kolomna plant, increased the weight and speed of passenger trains in 1970 years of the XX century, required the use of some lines more powerful than the TEP-60 diesel locomotives. On the Volga in October the roads began to use diesel locomotives to TEP-60. But the use of 2-section locomotives has caused a doubling of costs. Required the creation of a locomotive, having a capacity of greater than TEP-60, but without a significant increase in the weight of the locomotive. The first locomotive on the new project was built in June 1973. The locomotive received the designation TEP-70-0001. Locomotives begin to undergo operational testing at Belarusian railways. In the period from 1973 to 1985, Kolomna factory managed to build only 3 dozen locomotives. TEP-70 full-scale production has managed to establish only after withdrawing from the production in 1985 the former model passenger locomotive, TEP-60. And from 1973 to 2006 were produced 576 units of TEP-70.
Oh.
TEP-150, trunk 6-axle passenger locomotive with electric transmission, was produced at the Lugansk diesel locomotive plant in 2005. Is a further development of the model range, originating from TE-109. The construction is the locomotive TE-125, released in a single copy in 1974. Just released 4 of the locomotive, and they are all currently assigned to PM6 Kharkiv South Railway. In 2008 it was built 3 locomotives. As of September 2012, a further release is planned. This is due to the electrification of new railway sections, as well as lack of targeted funding. All power and auxiliary equipment of the locomotive is arranged in a light-bearing body. Removable roof section to allow you to freely make installation and disassembly of power equipment. The cabin is isolated from noise, equipped with air conditioning, a unified control panel, displaying information on the LCD display. Frontal cabin windows made of high-strength electrically heated glass. At the locomotive microprocessor control system, control and technical diagnostics. The locomotive is equipped with train heating system. Mainline 2-section diesel locomotive 2TE116 with a capacity of 2 times 3,060 horsepower, intended for freight service on the railways of the USSR, created by the diesel locomotive plant. The October Revolution Voroshilov grade, together with other enterprises, diesel locomotive plant them. Kuyabyshev Kolomna, a transport machine building plant M. Malasheva, Elektrotyazmash, to them. Lenin, Elektromashina, Kharkiv, Ukraine, and branch institutes of Teplovozы Stroitelny, Dnipro. Diesel locomotive 2TE116 consists of 2 identical with the cabin partitions, all managed from one any post of the cabin connected by a coupler CA3. If necessary, each section can be used as an independent locomotive. To move from section to section at the rear of the sections, there are doors and a transitional area, closed canvas souffle. All power and auxiliary equipment is located in the body made from the carrier mainframe. Powerful shunting locomotive TEM2 section with electric transmission is widely used throughout the railway network. Stocks of fuel, oil, water, sand, provide for the operation of the locomotive on maneuvers for a long time, up to 10 days, without equipment. The locomotive fits easily in curves with a radius of 80 meters and can work in 2 sections with 1 post. The TEM2 diesel locomotive set brand PD1M capacity of 1,200 horsepower, created on the basis of diesel engines D50, 2D50, 2D50M. The body design of these locomotives is slightly different from the body locomotive TEM1 first releases. The first locomotives TEM2 received for use in Liklbory Depot and Depot Ilyik Moscow Road. In the process of production of diesel locomotives TEM2 and their design changes were made after the release of several improved batches of locomotives from 1963 to 1966 BMZ, since 1967, passed to the serial construction of locomotives TEM2. From 1969 to 1979, in parallel with the BMZ locomotives TEM2 builds Voroshilov grade locomotive plant. Diesel locomotive TEM2-580 release in 1970, the first of the locomotives has the state quality mark. The arrival of diesel locomotive M62 owed to one interesting fact. In 1961, the Hungarian Railways purchased from the Swedish company Locomotive the Hague diesel 20-3 power of 1,950 horsepower, which were given the designation of the M61. The Soviet leadership, in particular, the first secretary of the CPSU Central Committee Nikita Khrushchev, was very unhappy when I found out about this purchase. After this incident, the countries of the socialist camp was denied the purchase of locomotives from capitalist countries. At the same time, in the Lugansk diesel locomotive plant had been sent the order to urgently develop a locomotive in the envelope of European railways of 1435 mm with a power capacity of 2,000 horsepower, The first prototype was built in 1965. In the new car lot was borrowed from the design of locomotives TE3 and TE10. Engineering the locomotive under Western envelope had to sacrifice the efficiency of the locomotive, which was slightly lower than the TE3. Major deficiencies have become apparent in the course of operation. It is possible to call the combination of the small capacity of the fuel tank with excessive veracity two-stroke diesel engine